welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe, and that is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. Nick Wright needs some coffee, but after that, we're raring to go. How's everybody?
Awesome. What a weekend of sports.
Oh, let me guess. Did you get to watch all of it uninterrupted, sitting down?
It's part of my job, Jenna Wolfe, so yes, I did. Absolutely. There are few rules and regulations in my household, Cece. One of them is first week in the NCAA tournament. I mean, I'm guessing, Cece, did you get dressed yesterday?
No, I was in my pajamas for a long time. Went to dinner late and everything.
I literally love hating you guys, both of you.
That's a great way to start the week, Jenna.
God. But I'm glad that everyone got a chance to watch a little bit of sports this weekend. Let's start with one of the moves that happened early on, the Jets move. You know, the one where they sold the farm for what could be the fattest cow on the lot. The Jets and the Colts swap picks, with the New York moving up to number 3 in April's draft. Indianapolis gets the 6th overall pick in addition to 3 second-round picks. Hey, the Jets want a franchise quarterback, no doubt about it. So, CC, let's start the conversation with you. How good of a move was this for the New York Jets?
Well, we're never going to know how good the move is until we see what is the prospect that they get, what type of offense do they put around them, does the kid develop to be their franchise quarterback? That's when you can determine if this is a good pick. Sure. Before then, you know, of course it's a good pick. They don't have a quarterback. When you don't have a quarterback, you have to do whatever you can to try to secure yourself one. They couldn't get Kirk Cousins. They offered him $30 million, offered him 2 more than Minnesota offered him. He decided to go to Minnesota, so you knew your next best option was to go into the free agent quarterback pool. They went with Josh McCown, a safe, Teddy Bridgewater, a little more of a risk there, but they haven't invested a lot of money in them. They haven't invested a lot of guaranteed money in them. And long term, if they get their quarterback, they're not strapped to a guy for the future. So I think it's a good move, because when you don't have a quarterback, this draft presents opportunities for several quarterbacks. If you're not in that race to get one of these young arms, then what are you doing as a franchise?
Right.
They're just going to put off, you know, their overall development as a franchise until 2019. And if I'm Todd Bowles, I have to make this pick. And the reason why is because if he don't get a quarterback, they're going to get rid of him. So he's got to be able to, him in the front office, they got to be able to try to trade and get up into it where they can definitely get one of the top 3 quarterbacks.
Here's my biggest concern with this move, because I understand why the incentives are for Mike Maccagnan, for Todd Bowles, to not worry about 5 years from now and worry about right now, because if they don't get the quarterback right,
then they don't have a 5 years.
Then they don't have a 5 years from now. But Jets fans do. If you're a Jets fan right now, you were likely birthed into that Jets fandom, and you can blame your parents for that, but there's no getting out of it. Like that, so you do have to worry about the health of your team long term. And the concern I have is this. Man, once in my lifetime, I was born in 1984. One time since 1984 was there a draft where there were 3 franchise quarterbacks. That was the famous 04 draft: Eli, Big Ben, Phillip Rivers. When you move up to get your quarterback and you don't get to 1 and you don't get to 2.
What year was Dan Marino drafted?
83. That's what I was 83. There were 3 that year as well. Elway, Kelly, Marino. So twice in the last 35 years we want to do it. Once since.
Forget how young he
is. Once since.
I do forget when I hear his takes.
Once in my lifetime, there's been a draft with 3 franchise quarterbacks.
Right.
So you traded 3 second-round picks, the 37th, the 48th, and next year's second-round pick, which will be in the top 40 most likely, to still not guarantee yourself one of the 2 best guys, to still, unless this is the outlier draft, need to rely on either the Browns or the Giants, or if the Giants trade the pick, whomever's drafting there, missing on their quarterback. That's the part that concerns me. And the idea that you could credibly say as the Jets after the draft, well, we had 3 guys all rated the exact same, when the top quarterback prospects are so different. Baker Mayfield doesn't have a lot in common with Josh Allen, who doesn't have a lot in common with Josh Rosen, who doesn't have a lot in common with Sam Darnold. When there's such different prospects, that's the part that concerns me. But CC's right on this end, no doubt. If they end up with a franchise quarterback,
it was worth it.
You could trade 6 second-round picks.
I guarantee you what's going to happen if they don't trade up. They're not going to get the quarterback that they want. That's the reason why you make the trade. And what if the Jets moved to if the Jets had the #1 pick, would you be more satisfied with it?
100%.
Why is that?
Because then you know you were getting the guy you
Who would
want.
be that guy you know?
Well, I don't. No. Hold on. I'm not saying you know.
I wasn't saying anything.
No. But I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying I know definitively who the guy is. But if you're drafting #1, what you know is you are getting the guy you want. At #3, you might not even get the first or second guy you want.
We can't determine this without looking at their board. All right? If they see the third quarterback is Josh Allen, and that's the guy they want him over all the other quarterbacks, he's going to be right there for him to take. So in that case, then they win. Like it's hard to not look at people's draft board and not equate the value to what they're getting. They might be in love with Baker Mayfield. He might be there for them. We don't know that part. So without knowing who they have ranked, because I can guarantee you the night of the draft, after they draft this player, they will definitely tell us, oh, this guy was the highest ranked player on the board. That's the way all the teams do.
Right.
The worry is not that the Giants are probably going to take with you. The worry is that someone else is going to trade up and jump in there, because all that we're hearing is the Giants right now are sort of leaning towards Saquon Barkley. But you're right. Unless they've got all 3 quarterbacks ranked exactly even, then you have a hard time getting the absolute guy you want. Are 1 or 2? We've had this discussion for weeks. There's not 1 or 2 or 3 that are leaps and bounds above all the others.
Of course not. I like the Jets getting in the mix, because where they were picking at 6, there's a possibility they wouldn't have one of the top 3 quarterbacks. And if they're not in love with whoever #4 is, you have to be able to get into the top 3 to try to get one of these guys.
I think maybe the other reason that just my instant reaction when I saw what they gave up, I was like, that's a lot, is I remember what the Bears gave up to move from 3 to 2. Now 3 to 2 is not as significant a jump as 6 to 3, but when they did it, they knew who they were drafting. They moved up knowing it was during the draft. We want to draft Mitch Trubisky. He's there. They gave up the 67th pick, a 3rd rounder, and a 4th rounder. It just feels like, think about it from this perspective, because we shouldn't ignore the Colts here. I think the Colts did amazingly well, because they're not drafting a quarterback. They not only stay in the top 6, but with the 37th, 48th, and next year's number 2, they can easily move back into the first round this year if they want to. And the Colts need a ton of talent and a ton of players.
Cece, how does this affect other teams in the draft now? What are people going to start? What are we looking at? Who wants to move where, and how much of an impact does it have?
If the Browns were thinking about drafting Saquon Barkley with the first pick, they can't do that now, because the possibility, those other 2 teams, the Giants, and after that, drafting a quarterback. So now they still have control of the draft and of the first round. But now they don't have as many options. But I also believe that they might not take Barkley. They might take the quarterback at 1, which I believe should be Sam Darnold. And then they might get Chubb, get him as a defensive end, match him with Myles Garrett, who they drafted last year to shore up their defense. So I believe it affects the Browns in the fact that the Browns now have more options at the #4 pick than they did before.
Well, this is the other winner from this trade, whether you think the Colts or the Jets were the winner of this part of it, is the Browns. Because what the Browns want more than anything, if they're taking a quarterback at 1, is for 2 and 3, for at least 1, if not 2 quarterbacks to go off the board. You now know, if you're Cleveland taking a quarterback at 1, that the team picking 3rd is taking a quarterback. So if the Giants keep the pick and they don't take a quarterback, then you're getting either Chubb or Barkley. If the Giants trade the pick to a team that wants a quarterback and wants to get in front of the Jets, then you get Barkley at 4. Or Chubb at 4, whomever you like more. Like, what the Browns want is, after they take a quarterback, for it to go quarterback when they pick again, because then they will be getting their #1 quarterback and their #1 skill position guy with the 1st and the 4th pick.
Are you off your corner of the Browns taking 2 quarterbacks?
Well, that was never really a corner. It was more of an idea and a hypothesis, something that I thought was interesting.
When did he say he was born?
1984.
Okay.
But now, if you're going to have certainly 2, if not 3 quarterbacks taken before the 4th pick, no, you don't need to take 2 quarterbacks. And that was before they had Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod's, by the way, not a terrible option for them.
So Jets fans, happy today?
Nick's worried about 5 years from now. To me, the Jets fans aren't as sophisticated. Oh, we're worried about the salary cap. 5 years from now, I'm worried about those draft picks. I'll miss.
Our boss is a Jets fan, so Whit, good luck to you.
On that note, we walk past to get into our office every morning after the show, Jets fans who work at the front desk. And for the fans out there, because Cece's right, they're not worried about the long-term ramifications of second-round draft picks. Jets fans are very excited this morning. That part I totally
Are you
agree
worried
with.
about what Kansas City's going to do in 5 years?
I'm
not worried, before you answer. I'm not worried about Minnesota. All right? I'm not worried about the salary cap. They're paying somebody a hell of a lot of money to be worried about the cap and the draft picks. As a fan, I want the best team on the field. You can pay Kirk Cousins $60 million. Let's try to win a championship.
All right. Coming up.
Sophisticated Jets fans. Oh, they're worried.
Whit, we still like you a lot.
That is a bit of an oxymoron, I understand.
We're going to break down a weekend of March Madness. Next on First Things First.
1980.
New topic, boys. There's a reason it's called March Madness. It's not called March Mediocre or March Middle of the Road. It is full-blown madness, and this weekend proved it. 6 of the top 12 teams went down. Among them, number 1 overall seed Virginia losing to 16 seed UMBC, which admittedly we all had to look up to see where they were. Number 1 seed Xavier went down. In fact, this is the first time since seeding began that 2 1 seeds failed to reach the Sweet 16. Nick, you stayed home and watched all of this uninterrupted. What did you make of all the upsets this weekend? I'm not bitter.
What I made of it was this. This was an exaggerated version of what people should come to expect in the NCAA tournament. Not quite half of the top 12 seeds in the tournament getting knocked out, but when you have so few of the blue bloods that have veteran players, when you have so many one-and-done guys, and when the tournament is set up to where it's not only that the mid-major teams or the lesser teams, the teams that don't have NBA prospects, tend to have veteran players because they're not going to leave early for the NBA, but also some of these 10, 11, 12 seeds, how'd they get into the tournament? By winning 9 in a row to finish the year? By winning their conference tournament? You are catching teams, veteran teams, the hottest they've been all year, to go along with what we saw in Arizona, a freshman team that just wasn't quite ready. Virginia, a team, it wasn't about youth for them, it was about style. They play a slow-it-down, muck-it-up defensive style where all of a sudden, if they're down 12, they have no way out of that. And then there's the outlier games, like what happened with Syracuse. Why did Syracuse beat Michigan State? Because unfortunately for Michigan State, they didn't play a lot of teams that played zone this year. So all of a sudden, it's like they're almost playing a different sport on the other end than what they've played all season long. So when the stylistic changes is something we've always seen, stylistic conflicts in tournament basketball. But the best teams being so young and not having tournament experience typically, not having guys that say, all right, listen, here's what we need to do here. That's why all of a sudden it is as wide open of an NCAA tournament as we've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's probably the closest we've ever seen the mid-majors being to the big power conferences. They're able to get better because they have veteran players, and the tournament is dominated by guards. So even if you're undersized and you have good guard play, you can do well in the tournament. So when the Blue Bloods, they don't run away from the pack, they're very, very young. That's why we're able to see these other teams able to play so close to them. Another thing, man, there's some great coaching out there. I mean, not at the prominent schools. I'm talking about guys that can really understand basketball. They can slow down the game enough that you can play with a team like Virginia, even though they were the #1 team ranked coming into the tournament. So for me, this is where college basketball is because of the one-and-dones and because of the youth that some of the big programs have. If you have 4-year seniors, 5-year seniors, and you have 3 or 4 of those, you can upset a team in the tournament. And the emotion of young people playing. That is kind of the essence of the tournament, and that's kind of what we saw this weekend.
You say this is where college basketball is. This is not an outlier tournament. This is the direction you think we're moving in, where there's, I don't know if you want to call the word parity, but there's a little more among big and
kids aren't
mid-majors.
going to Duke and Kentucky and staying there longer. The mid-majors and the smaller schools, the kids are going there for 4 and 5 years. So, yes, I look for this to continue. And also, coaches are staying at these programs and building their program up because if you win 1 or 2 games in the tournament, I mean, with the amount of resources that are being paid to coaches now, you don't have to go to a big school to get that type of compensation. So I think that we'll continue to see more upsets. Now, in my lifetime, we hadn't seen a 16 beat a 1. Now, do I expect to see that every year? No, absolutely not.
Right.
We got to give credit to what we saw there. That was a perfect storm coming together. Virginia, offensively, they are challenged. They do play a slow-down tactic. And are we going to see a team get hot like what we saw on Friday night?
The other thing, just real quick, about that one particular upset that people should remember, because they expanded, we'd never seen a 16 beat a 1. But because they expanded the field from 64 to 68, you got to keep in mind 4 16 seeds are playing in that opening round, okay? So under the old 64 team setup, UMBC, which was the 64th team in the field, would have been a 15 seed. And we've seen 15 seeds beat 2s. And it's not like Virginia, even though they were the overall #1 seed, was such an overwhelming favorite that they are way more talented than 2 seeds have been in the past. It's one of the reasons so many people liked Villanova going into this tournament, because they are one of the few teams that has one of the few blue blood teams that has prominent players that are their star players that have been deep in an NCAA tournament, that have the experience. And the other thing that I saw that you see, and it's one of the reasons why pro athletes deserve so much credit, is you saw repeatedly for the favored teams that if it's close late, they are unable to revert to their training. What did Urban Meyer tell us, like, at the point of conflict or the point of impact?
You go back to your training.
You go back to your training. Man, that is hard to do when you're 19 years old. That is hard to do when you are all of a sudden like,
well,
wait.
what kind of training have you had?
That's a good
I mean, you've been playing AAU basketball. Like, how many pressure situations have you been in like that? Not many.
Do you think this is good for college basketball or bad for college basketball, where we're headed?
I don't think the one-and-dones are good for college basketball. I like watching kids establish themselves, and I believe that the one-and-done has ruined more basketball careers than it's enhanced. I believe that kids should go to school, enjoy the college experience, work on your game. I believe it's hurt the game, and it's definitely hurt college basketball.
I don't believe CeCe may be right, very well be right about the one-and-dones, but as far as the upsets in the tournament, if that's what you're asking me about, I don't believe there is an NCAA tournament possible result that isn't good for college basketball. No matter what happens, it's a great tournament. But just by virtue of the fact there's so many games, it's a single elimination tournament, there's always going to be great storylines. There's always going to be someone such as a Sister Jean. There's going to be
as
a Loyola,
my mom, who never knows more about sports than I do, than when she fills out a much better bracket.
Right, and so that's like people, the randomness of the tournament, the storylines that all of a sudden people start falling in love with players they never heard of before. That will happen every single
But
year.
there used to be a tournament when they started, we knew the names. And now we're in an era where we don't know the names. So I don't think that's better for basketball. When I fill out my bracket, I'm like, okay, I got 2 or 3 people. I'm scrambling around. Okay, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Who is this guy? Okay, who's here now? Compared to the way college basketball used to be, I don't think the new brand is better.
All right, coming up, can Russell Westbrook lead the Thunder to playoff success? We'll break down his game next on First Things First. Friday, John Elway joined me as a member of the Case Keenum fan club. There's room on our bandwagon if anyone wants to join us. Broncos introduced Keenum, beginning his 2-year, $36 million deal. Elway had high praise for the former Viking, saying, quote, "We got our guy." CeCe, what does Case Keenum need to do to be successful in Denver?
Well, they better put an offensive line around them. They better discover how to run the ball in Denver. Their defense better be better than they were last year, because they weren't a great defense. And the pressure is on John Elway and the head coach there for Case. Case had a good season. But when you look at it in totality, the jury is still out on him. There is no Jenna, anybody else can jump on the Case band. There's a reason why he's 30 years old, and this is the first time he's been named the starter starting to a season or a franchise. And why did Denver, if this is their guy, why did they give him 2 years?
And why did they pursue Kirk Cousins?
Now, Mike Glennon, last year, Chicago gave him $16 million. So now Denver, after Case, and Case had better stats than Glennon would ever have, they only gave him 2 years at $18 million. So for me, they was a little buyer beware in acquiring Case Keenum. He was definitely playing BRC.
And the other thing you mentioned, when the parts of Denver that need to operate at a higher level for him to be successful, the one position group you didn't mention is the wide receivers. Like, once upon a time, we thought Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, that's one of the best pair of wide receivers in the NFL.
Yes.
And what it's turned out is while Emmanuel Sanders, I think, has continued to maintain a pretty high level despite mediocre quarterback play, Demaryius Thomas, much like Julius Thomas, the tight end that was there, his production seemed to go along with Peyton Manning's. Demaryius Thomas stayed. Julius Thomas ended up going to Jacksonville. But for both of those guys, once they got away from top-tier Peyton Manning, their production dropped off significantly. So Case does not have the easiest situation. It's obviously a better situation than had he signed with the Jets. So I think it's obviously not as good of a situation as if the Vikings had tried to keep him and he stayed there. But the other thing is this, that John Elway is saying this. I think it is absolutely on the board that Denver still drafts a quarterback.
Oh,
Denver's still sitting there at number 5.
Absolutely.
Like, Case Keenum is the starter right now, and they're shopping Trevor Siemian. He's the guy. But if they like Baker Mayfield, or if Josh Rosen falls to them, or if Josh Allen falls to them and they like him, like I would imagine right now it is more likely than not that Denver does draft a quarterback at number 5, assuming quarterbacks don't go 1, 2, 3 in the draft.
And in the A's, we talked about who does the Jets, them making that trade, who does it affect? It affected the Browns because it affects their flexibility and also gives them leverage if they want to get out of the 4 pick to acquire more picks. But it affects the Denver Broncos.
Do either of you feel Case Keenum can take this Denver team to the next level?
Listen, if Case was in Minnesota, and Minnesota's got a lot better team, there would still be huge question marks about Case. All right? Is Case better than the guys they had? Yes, but the guys they had, they were awful. To me, Case is never going to be in the top 16 quarterbacks in the NFL. Based on his talent, based on his limited arm talent, that's where I think Case will always be.
Here is the one part of this that is just an unknown. Think about what happened in San Francisco last year. The moment they went from the dregs of quarterbacking to just good quarterbacking. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, will be very good, but he wasn't great statistically in the final 5 games. But the rest of the team was like, oh, my God, we're not totally ruined by our quarterback, and everyone started to play better. How much better will everyone on Denver be when they don't have one of, if not the worst quarterback situations in the league? How much better will they be when they're not trotting out below replacement level? So if they do get to the next level, yes, Case will be a part of it, but it will also be because some of the other guys, the defensive players CC mentioned, the wide receivers I mentioned, start getting back to their highest level of play, which none of them were at last year.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I believe that Jimmy Garoppolo is a force multiplier. I do not believe Case Keenum is a force multiplier. Jimmy Garoppolo, what he did in that locker room, to the culture, through the staff, into the players, I believe that's what you want your franchise quarterback. I don't see that with Case, and Jimmy is a better vocal leader than Case is.
All right. Also, I have my work cut out for me this year.
Yes,
I already
clearly.
see that. Hey, if you haven't been following basketball,
You can put your flag on
while,
any vessel. It don't have to be a Case.
Yeah, that's good. It was well delivered. If you haven't been following b-ball in a while, here's what you missed. Jordan retired. The Warriors are good, and Toronto has the best record in the East. They were rolling along, looking for their 12th straight win, when the Oklahoma City Thunder said, I'm not sure about that. They beat Toronto behind yet another triple-double out of Westbrook. Thunder have now won their last 6 games. Russ talked about his mindset after this one.
I am a man on a mission. We got to take care of business. This time of the year, it's time to turn up a notch. And like I've always said, man, I'm just thankful and blessed to be able to go out and play. And every time I go on the floor, I try to give it all I have.
What we do, Nick, as this season goes along, I think we either temper expectations or raise them depending on where the team is. Clearly, we're in a different place than we were when we first saw these 3 stars on this team get together. But what do the Thunder need to do for this season to be considered a success for them?
I think they have to do 2 things to have any argument this season was a success. The first thing is get at least 1 round further than the playoffs they got last year. Last year, they made the playoffs and got wiped out. They need to get 1 round further. That means they have to win their first-round playoff series. If in the second round, they will be playing almost assuredly either Golden State or Houston. I don't think anyone's going to say if they lose to Golden State or Houston, this year was a failure.
Right.
But the way they play in that second-round series, if they get there, to me is what will ultimately determine if this year's a success, because in my eyes, the only real way you can consider this year a success is if Paul George decides to stay. Because if Paul George does not decide to stay, you are right back where you were a year ago, Russ and who, without the asset of Victor Oladipo, without all your picks moving forward to make a trade, without the ability to improve your team. And what we haven't seen in Oklahoma City, as good of a job as Sam Presti's done since he's been there, is a big-time free agent say, that's where I want to play. Everything they've done has been through the draft or through trades. So the way to consider this year's success for me is to play well enough in the postseason. Paul George says it is worth signing that max extension here. I don't think that can happen if you don't at least make the second round and if you're not at least somewhat competitive in that second round.
Yeah, I think it's hard to impossible for them to consider it successful. I don't think Paul George is going to come back. So now they must win their second round. For their fans to be able to look at this as a successful season, you talked about them losing in the first round last year. To me, they have to win in the second round. I don't care it's Golden State. I don't care that it's Houston. But to me, Paul George is already going to make his decision to move to Los Angeles. So when you've made those two trades, now you're stuck with one superstar, and you're stuck with Carmelo Anthony, who's still playing zone defense in a league that only plays man-to-man from Syracuse. So now your whole experiment has been a failure. You trading for Paul George has been a failure. So for me, they must win round number 2. And with Russell, if he plays like he's playing, he's going to make it difficult for someone to beat him 4 times in round 2.
So I'm glad CC brought up if Russell's playing the way he's playing. So I went into the numbers this morning. Since Christmas, okay, the Thunder have won 8 times against playoff teams. Every single one of those games, Russ has had to be incandescently great. In those 8 wins, he's giving you 32, 9, and 12.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Incandescently, incredibly bright, like a shining star.
Okay. You tell Jenna this all the time. Does our audience know that?
What incandescent means? I apologize. It's a fair point.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a fair point. He's had to be super duper awesome for them to be
Is that so hard?
Okay,
so that CC and I can fly?
Nobody in the audience know what the heck that meant.
Okay. All right. Good. Listen, that's what I appreciate you checking me on that. That was good. That's good. I appreciate that, CC. Russ has had to be above MVP level Russ for them to beat good teams. So for them to beat one of the 2 best teams in the sport, Golden State or Houston, can he do that 4 times in 2 weeks? I mean, how'd they beat Portland? Russ went 37, 13, 14. How'd they beat Cleveland during the stretch? He gave you 23, 9, and 20. How'd they beat Golden State the time they beat Golden State a few weeks ago? He gave you 34, 9, and 9. Like, he has to be so great for them to compete with the best teams in the league.
Well, so CC, I'll ask you this. Do you believe that this team can make a successful run if he doesn't play lights out?
Oh, no. They got no chance.
So they
don't have a supporting cast. No, they are a mediocre team with one superstar. All right? Paul George, sometimes he's a star, but he's no superstar. He doesn't take over games. He doesn't take over series. He doesn't have that type of personality, even though he's one of the best players in the league.
Here's the reason that to me, I'm disappointed Oklahoma City's not better, even if they're not as good as Golden State or Houston, but not a team that I thought, you know what, credibly, if the right breaks fall their way, they could beat Golden State or Houston, because I don't think they can. Paul George, while he's not a superstar, not one of the 8 best players in the league, he is, to me, exactly what you want for your second best player on a team. A guy that plays both ways, a guy that's a great defender, a guy that doesn't have to take over games, a guy that, when I say doesn't have to take over games, I mean you don't have to run your offense for him. He can find his shots elsewhere. That is exactly what I want as my second best player. Russ is playing, aside from his 3-point shooting, nearly as well as last season. Even if you say Melo was a bust, Steven Adams is still playing really well. Like, why this team is still in that second tier of teams is disappointing to me. At least what I thought the fair expectations were for them going into this year.
I knew they'd have a problem with that bench. There's no way you looked at their bench and thought they'd be able to give you the type of productivity, especially in the West. Like when their stars go to the bench, who is going to be able to get them buckets? Who can get them stops? They don't have those players. So they are absent of talent, roster-wise, to compete with the top teams in the NBA.
The other fun thing to come out of this weekend, we all got a chance to watch Tiger Woods, which was a lot of fun. So coming up, could Tiger's second straight top 5 finish lead him back to another major championship? We'll break down Tiger Woods next on First Things First. Hopefully, Tiger Woods, you made you feel better. Another tournament, another weekend in contention. Tiger Woods finished 5th at the Arnold Palmer this weekend, his second top 5 finish in a row. He shot a 3 under par on the final day, keeping him in contention for most of the afternoon on Sunday. Here's more from Tiger Woods after that final round.
If you would have asked me, at the beginning of the year that I would have had a chance to win 2 golf tournaments, That's that would have been. I would have taken that in a heartbeat. Very, extremely.
CC, second straight finish in the top 5. How optimistic are you about Tiger Woods?
I'm very optimistic. I'll take you guys back to Friday morning. After Tiger had shot 4 under, he was on the leaderboard. People were excited. Hendrick Stenson came back later on, shot a bigger number later in the day.
Later in the day on Thursday to get to 8 under.
Yes, but I told you where I wanted Tiger Woods to be consistent, to make the cut, to get in contention on the back 9 on Sunday, and finish in the top 5. That's exactly what Tiger Woods did. He's been able to show that now I can bounce back 2 weeks. He's done this twice this year in back-to-back tournaments where he's been able to not only play and make the cut, but also get the practice rounds in, to get that nervous tension, to get out there in the crowd. So for me, these were monumental tournaments for him to be able to feel the pressure, see himself hit shots, not only his iron game, but his short game, to be able to do that under pressure. That is what you want. Tiger Woods, I said that last week, that he would win in the next month. I still believe in the next month he will win a golf tournament. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he won the Masters. If you look at this week's tournament, I think there's 140 players playing at Bay Hill. 24 of the top 50, probably the toughest field that we've seen in the world play this year. Augusta is not that way. It will be the top field, but there's only 72 players. And in 72 players, I'm telling you, there are less than 20 that can actually win it. That means they have the game and they have the nerve to be able to hold up to Augusta's pressure. So, yes, Tiger Woods, amazing finish at Bay Hill. A tournament that he has dominated, has won 8 times. This was exactly what I needed to see, and I'm really excited about Tiger going forward.
And if people, I understand on Sunday, if they were watching the NCAA tournament and they were not able to be locked in on Tiger, I want to paint the picture a little bit, because he starts the day 5 shots off the lead, right? So he knows he's going to need the leaders to come back a little bit. He's going to need to make us push, and he does. And he goes to the tee box at 16 at 12 under, with the leaders all of a sudden at 13 under. Now, Rory hadn't made his unbelievable charge yet. And he goes to tee box at 16 thinking, this is a par 5. If I birdie, much less eagle this thing, I can win this tournament. Now, he had a bad shot on 16. He talked about it after the round. He said, I was indecisive. I either needed to bomb it or just hit my 3-wood. He ended up going in between, is what he said. He didn't commit to it. He kept saying, I didn't commit to it. He went way out of bounds, and that basically ended the tournament for him. He bogeyed a hole that he needed to birdie, and then the next hole he bogeyed as well, which is why he finished at 10 under. But he was right there for the second straight weekend. Last weekend, he was to the 18th hole, 1 shot off the lead with a putt to force a playoff. This weekend, he was to the 16th hole, 1 shot off the lead with a chance to go win the tournament. And CC's talked a ton about his short game. Short game means everything around the greens. I want to talk about super short game just for a moment. In this tournament, Tiger Woods had 59 putts inside of 10 feet. He made 59 putts inside of 10 feet. 59 of 59 on 9-foot or shorter putts. It would be remarkable for anyone that's not Tiger Woods. Typically, the only guys that can do that are guys where that is the singular biggest strength of their game.
The only people that can do that, they're robots. All right? You could put a robot out there, and a robot could do worse. Based on the wind, based on the ball could hit a little mark, a divot, and go off course. The one we saw where it went all the way around the hole.
360 around.
It's incredible for him to build a putt almost robotic. I mean, from 9 feet in on the PGA Tour to be able to do that. It's in yesterday's greens, they were the fastest they've just seen. On the step meter, they were 13 to 14. So it was encouraging to me because these are the fastest greens until they get to Augusta National.
So the short game we talked about, did you see a remarkable difference and improvement in the way he played from just last week to this week? CC, we talked a lot about breaking down his game last week.
No, Tiger Woods' short game is one of the most remarkable things. People always talk about, oh, he hits the ball long, he hits the ball. Tiger Woods' short game has always been one of the most consistent things. Wait a second. One of the most consistent things that he's been able to do. He followed up last week's spectacular short game with the same thing. His problem is his driver. He's changed his equipment. He's changed the type of He's changed the type of steel that he's putting in his driver now. He's also going to a shorter shaft. So that's the only club in his bag, his driver, that's giving him any type of problem.
Hold on, because I have to ask you guys about this. When you're an athlete, explain this to me in golf, because I don't really get it. Why would you change something that has worked for you? Why would you change your equipment? Why, especially when you know he's already having trouble driving?
Technology has gotten better. All right, and he doesn't have the same type of body that he had 10 or 15.
So this was to help just adjust.
It's lighter weight.
Yeah.
All right, it's allowed him to get the type of swing speed that he has, the highest in his career. So the technology and him embracing technology, that's exactly what he should be doing.
I think when Jenna was asking you about improvements outside of the short game, I think was the question. Outside of his short game, which was great last week and this week, because my opinion is the one thing this week I thought he did better, especially on the weekend, was his approach shots. He said it last weekend that on Sunday he didn't trust his irons, which is one of the reasons why he was hitting a bunch of greens in regulation, but it was 35 foot. It was 40-foot putts. This weekend I thought his approach shots were much better. He also on Sunday was more aggressive with the driver. Now it cost him on the out-of-bounds shot. It also cost him earlier in the round where he could have been out of bounds. He was, it seemed like, 60 yards dead right. It just wasn't out of bounds. That you said two things before the show, CC, that I want you to say explain to the audience. One was about what it will mean for everyone else if and when Tiger's driver gets right. And the other was about what Rory did and if he could have done it if he were playing with Tiger.
It becomes harder when you're in the same group. Roy had talked about before the crowd noise. He didn't know how Tiger was able to play. He also complained about people and the beverages they were drinking. He was like, people used to come to a golf tournament, drink beers. Now you see guys with multiple cocktails. I don't know if we should maybe cut back on that at the golf course. So Roy's worried about a lot of things. The reason why his short game is important, all the golfers know they do not have a better short game than Tiger Woods. So they know if they don't hit the ball off the tee better than him, they have no chance of beating him because his overall ability to scramble and be able to do it with all the noise, all the distraction. If you've never been to a golf tournament, you have never seen the difference between the top 5 players in the world and the crowd that's watching them, and Tiger Woods, the number of people, how many deep they're back. They're 20 deep back in the gallery. That would describe a typical day on the weekend watching Tiger Woods, and it's hard to do that to the top players when they're playing with Tiger. Tiger's used to it. They're not used to it, and they're distracted more because golf is a quiet man sport compared to like football. Tiger, it's a basketball game and a football game when he's there. The other guys are used to a little more quiet and a little more etiquette around the golf course.
And if you've been out there, where it used to be everyone just watching, now it's this on everything. It's this.
And people run.
Except when you get to the Masters.
They confiscate that damn
you're not
phone.
allowed to have your
The
phone.
one thing to watch when the Masters, there's par 5s. We talked about Tiger and his par 5 scoring. The Masters, the par 5s there, 3 of them are a dog leg left. Tiger has a hard time turning the ball from right to left. So those 3 holes that he has dominated, he will have a hard time if he doesn't get his driver fixed. So you say, Chris, man, what are you worried about going forward? I'm worried about Tiger's driver, and at Augusta, 3 of the par 5s are a dog leg right to left. And those holes Tiger struggles on hitting it off the tee.
All right, we'll look to see about that. Coming up, though, switching gears here, are the Warriors' injuries finally going to catch up to them? We'll talk about that next time. First things first. All right, welcome back to First Things First. We're joined by NBA analyst Sarah Kustok. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, you guys. Thanks for having me back again.
Absolutely. Good to see you, Sarah.
Wonderful, thank you.
How was your weekend?
It was good. It was a lot of basketball games.
Lot to choose
I can't
from.
even remember what games I had. It goes so quickly.
Well, I'm going to jog your memory with basketball news. What is going on with the Golden State Warriors these days? That's my question to you, Sarah. It is a full-fledged MASH unit out there. First it was Steph in the ankle, then it was Clay in the thumb, then Draymond on the shoulder. Now Kevin Durant suffered a rib injury that'll sideline him the rest of the month. But other than that, everything is amazing. All right, Sarah, you worried about the Warriors? And if so, how much?
I don't want to turn this into a conversation about any teams other than the Warriors, but I'm more concerned about the Warriors because of how much belief I have in the Houston Rockets. And I think when it comes to the Warriors, we had talked about this last week. Kevin Durant doesn't concern me as much. You look at Klay Thompson, his injury doesn't concern me as much. They still got about 2.5 weeks left in the season. We know the playoffs and the rounds drag out a bit. But with Steph Curry, with his recurring ankle injuries, and just all of these players, the importance that they bring to the team, if they're not fully healthy, I think they're going to have a whole lot of trouble, and not just the Houston Rockets, but even the way they line up against the Portland Trail Blazers. If that ends up being the 2-3, which it's very much looking like, the type of challenges they're going to have in each round is unlike what they had last year.
Well, and the other thing that happened this weekend, and it happened on Friday night, there's NCAA games going on, late West Coast games, so people probably aren't paying attention, but the Warriors lost to the Kings. And guess what that means? The Warriors are not the 1 seed. That is over for them. They would need to go undefeated the rest of the way, and if Houston have its worst 12-game stretch of the season. They would need to go 12-0, and if Houston go 8-4 to get the 1 seed by a single game.
I think last week's conversation, we had moved on from Houston was going to be the number 1 seed.
And I don't think there's any question.
It was. We were all assuming last week Houston was going to be the 1 seed.
I mean, we were assuming Golden State was going to rest some players. There was no way they're going to be able to catch Houston, given their injury concern.
But Cece, when we last talked, Durant didn't have the ribs. Or we didn't know about it, and we knew that the Warriors had games against the Kings and the Suns. And we knew that, at least I thought, going into it, okay, so they'll be 2-0. Like, they're going to be, the Kings aren't even trying to win games. The Suns aren't trying to win games. And so the fact that we can now sit here this morning and say that race is officially over, that matters. Not, and again, maybe people don't care about home court in the Western Conference Finals. That's fine. But it's what Sarah mentioned. Go get Portland. The hottest team in the NBA. Winners of 13 straight. Damian Lillard, who is trying to, by the way, steal away Steph Curry's first-team All-NBA guard spot, given Steph Curry's injury and how well Lillard's been playing. Go get them in round 2. A team that right now is playing as well as anyone in the sport. That's what the 2 seed means for them.
Round 2? What about round 1?
And that's
San Antonio.
Question.
Like, forget about the second round. The first round, playing against Popovich and Kawhi coming back in San Antonio. The physicality for which San Antonio will play with. Like, they're playing at least 4, and that those 4 games are going to be knockdown, drag out. Now, with all the injuries that they had, man, they need, like they had last year, sweep. Like, they need those now more so than ever. We talked about before the season started, Nick, that this would be their toughest run. And then now, okay, man, this is no guess now. Okay, we late in March. This is what it is. They're going to be the number 2 seed, but also Minnesota might be there. San Antonio might be there to face them in round 1. To me, this is their toughest first-round matchup that we've seen since this group collectively has been together, and that was even before KD came.
I was just out in Golden State to call a Warriors game 2 weeks ago, and Steve Kerr said he has not he said the 2015 season, when I think if you remember, San Antonio dropped from 3 to 6, Oklahoma City missed out because New Orleans won. He said that was the one year he remembers it even being close to as deep in the Western Conference. He said, but that doesn't even compare to this year. He said he cannot look back and remember a time when there was this much depth and this much challenge from 1 through 8, even past 8, than it is this year.
Right. When you look at 5 through 8, all these teams have 40 wins. So you're like, wow, this is the bottom of the Western Conference. And this is the part where there's a huge separation between them and the Eastern Conference. Like, when you're in the East and you're the 2nd seed, 3rd seed, 4th seed, it's okay, you cool. In the Western Conference, absolutely not. This is not the recipe for them to repeat back-to-back champions by facing a team like that in the first round.
Toronto rolls through the East and they
that's the other thing you mentioned. Toronto, go ahead. No, Toronto's going to, right now, Toronto is pacing to they're a game behind home court on the Warriors, right? So, I mean, all of a sudden, if you believe Toronto's going to make the finals, the Warriors could potentially, if they get there, be on the road in the Western Conference Finals and then on the road again to start the NBA Finals. I want to say one other thing about the bottom of the West. It's also an odd year in this way. San Antonio, bottom of the Western Conference playoff picture. San Antonio, Minnesota. You know what they both should have by the first round of the playoffs? The best player on their team coming back.
Yep.
Kawhi Leonard and Jimmy Butler.
But so are the Warriors, right? So the Warriors are going to get themselves back. And if there's any team in the league that you don't have to worry about them needing a couple days to get back on track with how they all play, wouldn't it be the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, but the physicality of the playoffs is totally different. The speed, the intensity, for which they play, and the style. The referees allow you to play very physical defense. So the reason why we're concerned about the Warriors because they got some injuries. Now, Klay, we don't know about his thumb, but they're going to be banging that thumb when we get into the playoff. Kevin Durant, Man, that's one of the worst injuries is to break your rib or to fracture your rib or to pull the cartilage away from your rib, especially for a basketball player.
Have you had that happen to you?
I haven't had it happen. But we've seen it happen.
Yep.
It's hard to breathe, let alone shoot a basketball and run up and down the court. A football player, we can put a flap jacket on a guy. We can take a needle, shoot it right in there, and numb it. As a basketball player, you can put a little protective around you, but Kevin Durant, to me, he doesn't have the type of body. That's why I'm worried about this injury lingering on, because you get hit the wrong way, then you have a little setback. You get another little tear in there. So that's a serious injury for me, for a guy who's a finesse basketball player.
I also think, and I don't know the answer to this, but with Golden State having won 2 of the last 3 NBA championships, looking at the big picture of their organization, if Durant or if Steph Curry, if they're still banged up at some point in the playoffs, I do not believe they risk these players in their overall career in health to just play.
I believe Steph is the only one. I believe the rest of them are going to play. Because with a thumb, with a hairline fracture in a thumb, eventually that's going to seal up, and that's going to be done.
Same with the ribs. The ankle is the one. The
yes.
ankle, what they will not do is put Steph on his brand new Supermax contract at risk of this ankle injury derailing the next 5 years of his career. I totally agree with you.
I believe the organization would have a hard time keeping Steph off the court. I believe Steph would veto.
He'll want to play.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's going to play.
Yeah.
I want to add one name that we have not discussed, because there's a butterfly effect to these injuries. Even if they're just being cautious with Durant and cautious with Clay and cautious with Steph, somebody's got to play those minutes. And Andre Iguodala is not younger than he used to be. And you look at the last 2 games, okay, so Andre Iguodala against the Suns played 28 minutes. Against the Kings, he played 31 minutes. That wasn't part of the plan. Part of Golden State's plan was not having Andre Iguodala playing the most minutes he's played all year.
And this probably being his least productive season of the last 4.
Yep. Right. They're basically playing Quinn Cook and Nick Young 40 of 48 guard minutes each, because they're out of guards and because they don't really care about their rest level come the playoffs.
Well, there's nothing they can do about it. You got to field the team.
Right. And they could play Sean Livingston more, but they're trying to be cautious with Sean. So they're like, Sean, even if we might drop a game, Nick Young or Swaggy P and Quinn Cook are going to take those minutes. They can't do that with Iggy. Like, they're running out of forwards as well. They don't want Iguodala to be tired going into the playoffs. We've seen how important he's been for both of their championship years.
And this goes back to last year. They had 4 games in that first round. They had 4 games. They were playing 4. Now what if a series goes to 6, goes to 7, and it stretches things out more? They don't have the same amount of rest that they had last year during the postseason, and how might that affect them and how they're playing?
And they can't have the same confidence Houston. I watch Houston every time they play.
Man.
There ain't no way they got the same confidence. So playing down the stretch and being together is very important.
And Sarah, to your point, that the one year they didn't win the title, I truly believe the Cavs do not beat them in 7 if the Thunder don't take them 7. If the Thunder don't beat them up and exhaust them and make them use every last bit of energy to get out of the West, then all of a sudden, because they looked tired at the end of that series against the Cavs, which was understandable.
I'm usually one at this table that gets dramatic about things and blows that out of proportion. I don't know why I have zero concerns about the Warriors. I feel like they're giving them enough rest, that playoffs are going to start, everything's going to be okay. Now this, sitting next to the guy that has watched more minutes of basketball than I've been alive. So let's
I think the general public, I think, agrees with you, Jen.
Oh, okay.
The Warriors, they're the Warriors. They'll be fine.
Sarah, we're going to see you a little bit later in the show. Coming up, who's the favorite to win it all after a crazy weekend of March Madness? That's next on First Things First. And finally, LeBron James continues his stellar month of March. He had 33 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists in a win over Chicago on Saturday. It was his 15th triple-double of the season, and LeBron is averaging 30 points, 10 boards, 9 assists throughout this month, which is not bad. How does he continue to impress game after game in year 15, Nick?
Well, the LeBron somehow having the best offensive year of his career, arguably, in year 15, is not something I saw coming. And LeBron having 2 of the best months of his career ever these last 2 months is also not something I saw coming. But since he averaged for the first time in his career a triple-double for a month this past February, this month, the month of March, he's giving you 30 points, like you mentioned, 10.4 rebounds, 9.1 assists. So he might average a triple-double for the 2nd consecutive month. But the reason this is relevant to me, CC, is LeBron is, and I think he recognizes it out of necessity, he is engaging that playoff mode about a month earlier than he typically does. Because the Cavs were, given all the injuries, given how they were playing, they were briefly at least, before Detroit entered a total tailspin, at risk of missing the playoffs. Certainly at risk of going on the road in round one. Now, they're still technically at risk of falling to the 5 seed, but I don't think they will. What you're seeing is LeBron do everything earlier than he typically does. Now, he's not a guy we've seen get fatigued in the past, but I don't think we've seen LeBron at near this age have to start going this hard this early in a season.
Right. I think LeBron also understands that the Jordan thing is going to come through numbers. It's not going to come through championships. I believe that's the reason why he's trying to push to play 82 games this year, so he can say in year number 15, I played some of the best basketball. The triple-double, the most in one season since he's been in the NBA, it's a combination of he's in great shape, he hadn't gotten nicked, and it's out of necessity. Based on the lack of talent around him, he knows that he's got to play. Now, his assists are up higher because this year he came into the year where he was going to be a distributor of the ball more. Now, his shot, he said in injuring his elbow this offseason, he discovered something in his shot. So discovering that in his elbow, so he's shooting the ball better, the combination of the injuries to his team and the trade, because I believe if they don't trade and they have the same collection of players, I believe LeBron takes some time off. But because they made that trade and Love getting hurt, it leads to him playing more minutes. And I believe that in this season 15, he's trying to send the message that he can play all 82 games, a lot like Michael Jordan used to do.
And I want to add one thing that CeCe mentioned about the elbow injury and the shot. Up until January, LeBron was having the best three-point shooting year of his career. In January, he was awful from three. I think he shot 21% from three in January after shooting 43% in the season leading up to it. Since January ended, February to now, he's back to shooting 41% from three. Like that, if LeBron is shooting anywhere close to 40% from three, that's one of the reasons, in addition to the improved assist numbers, he's having the best offensive year, I believe, of his career is if he consistently is knocking down three-pointers, there's no good way to guard him. There's no good shot to give him. And he's now developed that fadeaway he likes so much on the left corner, like the left elbow fadeaway that we saw him win a game with, that we see him go to in fourth quarters regularly now. He did that again against Chicago.
Is there anything that he's not improving on? Is there anything that he's doing worse in year 15 than he has been doing in years past?
Well, he can't play the type of defense.
Correct.
He doesn't put the type of energy into the defensive end until they get into the playoffs or in clutch.
Why? Because
it's
so just draining? If you say you don't put the energy in, that's different than saying you don't have the skill set anymore.
No, he's
that's
human.
Something you can...
He's human. He's rested a little bit on defense.
Yep. I mean, he's
not as athletic either at 33. Like, it's impossible.
I think if he were going all out, he still wouldn't be as good of a defender as he was his first couple years in Miami. One of those years in Miami, he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. He was, at a point in time, the league's best defensive player. Now, even if he goes all out, he wouldn't be the league's best defensive player. But when you're carrying such a load on on offense, you've got to rest at times. This is what we saw when James Harden was getting criticized a lot. He was the Rockets' only offense. If you're going to play 80-plus games, what's up?
James Harden has never been an elite defender, even since second grade.
Oh, no.
Like, he was a liability defensively.
I absolutely agree with you. But what we've seen this year is because he is carrying a smaller load offensively, even not as...
I think it's a conscious effort by James with that team with Chris Paul and C.J. Tucker, the mental toughness. Yeah, he decided, I'm going to play more defense. Because you can't play that type of offense, be that athletic, and then once the ball turns over and you're on the defensive end, just be a liability.
I agree that part of it was, with James, a lack of attention to detail and a lack of focus on it. But I also truly believe the 2 years he was the worst at defense, people were making fun of him. He led the NBA in minutes and games both years. He was the only offense on their team and their only guard that threatened you. If you're going to play that type of minutes, you're going to have to rest on some ends of the court. And I think you're seeing something similar with LeBron. With the workload he's carrying offensively, he's going to have to find time to rest. If he's not going to take games off, and he's going to play 38 minutes per game.
All right, let's talk some football. If you are a Jets fan like our boss, Whit Album, your life when it comes to football has been nothing shy of frustrating. The Jets are in a perennial state of trying to get back on track. And on Friday, they made a statement, giving away a lot to get what they hope will be also a lot. The Jets and the Colts swap picks, with New York moving up to number 3 in the draft, hopefully to get their franchise quarterback. Colts get their 6th overall pick in addition to 3 second-round picks. CC, how good of a move was this for the Jets?
I believe it's a good move because I believe that Todd Bowles and the general manager there, that their careers are in the balance. And when they are in the balance and you don't have a quarterback and you haven't had a quarterback for 3 years, we know that they made the mistake in Christian Hackenberg. He'll never be a starting quarterback. Bryce Petty, he will never be a starting quarterback unless someone gets hurt. So they've made mistakes in drafting guys before. They're in the situation you can't compete in the AFC East without a quarterback. They signed Josh McCown 1 year, another Band-Aid on something that needs stitches and surgery. But with Teddy Bridgewater got him injury, 1-year deal. So they don't long-term have dollars committed to a quarterback. Like, you don't want to be in the top part of the draft. And Todd Bowles, this team outperformed itself last year. Imagine if they had a competent quarterback. So for me, you have to get into the mix. They had to get into the top 4. They were able to do that by giving up those 3 second-round picks.
So if the Jets get their franchise quarterback out of this trade, they could have traded 5 second-round picks in addition to the number 6 pick, and everyone would be fine with it. It is all going to be, do they get their guy? The reason that my gut reaction when I saw this, when I think it was Adam Schefter broke this news, and I saw it and I saw what they gave up, the reason my gut reaction was they didn't move up into the top 2. What we've seen with the major quarterback moves of recent times, whether it's RG3, whether it's trade that ended up being Carson Wentz, the trade that ended up being Mitch Trubisky, is the trade that ended up being Jared Goff, was teams moving up to 1 or 2. The Jets moved up to 3. Now, if the Giants stay there and the Giants don't draft a quarterback, then it's like you moved up to 2. But I believe the second pick of this draft is going to be a quarterback. I believe either the Giants are taking one or they will be offered a king's ransom from a team that wants to move in front of the Jets, in front of the Broncos, to go get a quarterback.
And that team might be Buffalo.
Sure, and Buffalo, it seems, is stockpiling assets in order to be able to make that move. So if you are looking at getting the 3rd available quarterback in this draft, you either have to believe there are 3 franchise quarterbacks in this draft, which has happened once since the famous 83 draft with Elway, Kelly, and Marino, and that was in 2004 with Eli, Rivers, and Big Ben, or you have to believe one of these other 2 teams is going to screw up. And that's what makes me nervous. If you
can't rely on the latter.
If you're just going to, you can't just rely on one of these teams to mess it up.
For over 2 months, Mel Kiper's been saying Cleveland's going to draft Josh Allen. They're going to take him. He's not the highest ranked, but he's been saying that. The reason why he's on their board is not because Mel thinks he's better. The reason why he's on their board is because he's been hearing people say they're going to draft him. So let's just say he's right. Let's say that he's right. The Giants, you think they're going to take Sam Darnold?
Sure.
Okay, your guy's sitting right there for the Jets.
Josh Rosen. Yep, absolutely.
So for me, it was the right pick because they're going to get a guy. I believe because people have Josh Allen higher ranked than some other people, that he's going to slip into the top 2, which is going to allow the Jets to have their guy available at number 3. For 3 number 2s, you can have my first-round pick. When I don't have a quarterback, if the guy is there who I'm in love with, then that is a great trade when the Jets get their quarterback.
I thought Ryan Leaf made a really interesting point when he was on last week. And he was like, how many franchise quarterbacks are there in the NFL? 12? We want to call it 12? 14 at the most? Maybe 10? Let's call it 12. We really believe there's going to be 4 new ones from this draft class? People are talking about that all of a sudden we're going to have 3, 4, maybe 5 new franchise quarterbacks when there's only 12 alive. History would tell us you're lucky if there's 2. That the best quarterback classes have 2 franchise guys. Most only have 1. And so now listen, if the Jets have intel that, hey, we love 2 quarterbacks and one of the Browns are going to take someone that isn't one of those guys, then I understand it. I find it highly unlikely, though, that the Jets love 3 quarterbacks, especially because they're so different stylistically. Like, if you love Baker Mayfield, would just love Josh Rosen.
You don't fall in love with the style. I think you come comfortable with their skill set. It's not a matter of we're looking for a guy who scrambles, we're looking for a pocket passer, we're looking for a guy who can play. So you're not falling for a style because they're not an offense that's dictated on a guy playing a certain way. They can take a small guy, they can take a big guy, they can take a guy that's going to develop. So I think that is a little bit different in trying to evaluate How good are these guys going to be at the next level?
There's also not a clear-cut 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean,
Correct.
throw Lamar in there, too. So I think that's part of the reason that if you're a Jets fan, you could be enamored by this, because there isn't, hey, that guy is definitely number one. I mean, Cleveland could take Sam Darnold. Like,
Absolutely.
this is what we're hearing, but we just absolutely don't know at this point.
I also want to know, Cece, because you like this trade from the Jets' perspective. I love this trade from the Colts' perspective. Sometimes you can believe both teams did well. If you're the Colts, you were never taking a quarterback. You have Andrew Luck coming back. I believe the Colts...
They had to trade out of that pick. It didn't make sense for them because they're going to take a defensive player.
Agreed, but what they got in trading out of it, to only move back 3 spots, so you're still getting
all of that.
A blue chipper, and then to get the 37th, the 48th, and next year's second-round pick. I think with the 37th and 48th, the Colts potentially could move back into the back of the first round. Like, the Colts need talent. They need players. They need a running back. They need a couple offensive linemen. They probably need a whole new a set of defensive players. Like, for the Colts, I think this is, in my eyes, I don't know where you stand, this is no questionly.
Well, they had to based on need and what's on the board. That was a smart for them to get out of that pick because they don't need a quarterback. Let someone get in there who needs a quarterback, which drove up the price, and they got a nice, they fetched a nice a group of picks for that pick to get out of that spot.
Excited for the draft. Coming up, can Russell Westbrook lead the Thunder to playoff success? We're going to talk about that next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.